The mockery begins. The unwelcome truth. Lieutenant Marcus Stone pressed his face against the observation deck's reinforced glass, watching the sleek alien fighters glide through space like deadly dancers. Their movements were flawless, calculated to the microsecond, each turn and roll executed with mathematical precision that made his stomach churn with a mixture of awe and frustration. Beautiful, aren't they? The voice behind him carried the distinctive hiss of the saurian species. Marcus didn't need to turn around to know it was High Chancellor QYXstar, the 7-foot-tall reptilian who commanded Coalition Station Nexus 7. "They're certainly precise," Marcus replied, keeping his tone neutral. After 18 months stationed here, he'd learned that showing any hint of irritation only encouraged the aliens' condescending lectures. QYXstar moved beside him, his scaled form casting a shadow over the human pilot. Precision, yes. But more than that, perfection. Our AI guidance systems eliminate every flaw, every unpredictable variable that organic pilots introduce. His forked tongue flicked out briefly. No offense intended, of course. Marcus bit back his first 3 responses. Of course not. The daily humiliation. The training bay buzzed with activity as pilots from 6 different species prepared for the day's exercises. Marcus watched a group of saurian pilots clustered around their sleek fighters, their scaled heads bobbing in what passed for laughter among their kind. "Look at this," one of them called out in heavily accented standard. "The human actually thinks he can compete in today's precision flying test." Marcus's jaw tightened as he performed his pre-flight checks on his battered Earth-built fighter. The Peregrine-class vessel looked primitive compared to the alien ship surrounding it, all angles and rough welding where theirs were smooth curves and seamless construction. Engineer Rebecca Hayes approached, her tool kit jangling softly. "Don't let them get to you, Stone. This old bird's got more character than all their fancy ships combined." "Character doesn't win dogfights," Marcus muttered, running his hand along a particularly obvious weld mark on his ship's hull. "No," Rebecca agreed, "but it might surprise you what does." The exercises began with formation flying, something the aliens excelled at with their AI assistants. Marcus watched as squadron after squadron performed flawless diamond formations, their spacing perfect to the centimeter. When his turn came, his wingmen maintained formation through manual control, but their spacing varied by several meters throughout the course. "Human squadron, maintain proper formation," came the bored voice of the saurian flight controller. "Your spacing is completely inconsistent." Marcus gritted his teeth. "Acknowledged, Control. Adjusting." But even as he tried to match the AI precision of the alien ships, he couldn't help but notice something the aliens missed. Their perfect formations were exactly that, perfect. Every diamond was identical, every turn executed at precisely the same angle and speed. If someone wanted to predict where they'd be at any given moment. The pattern emerges. Admiral Kelric Voss found Marcus in the station's human quarters that evening, staring at his personal tablet with an intensity that caught the older man's attention. At 62, Voss had silver hair and the kind of weathered face that spoke of decades in space, back when humans were still exploring their own solar system. "Something troubling you, Lieutenant?" Marcus looked up, startled. "Admiral. I didn't hear you come in. You were pretty focused. What's got your attention?" Marcus hesitated, then turned his tablet around. "I've been analyzing the flight patterns from today's exercises. Look at this." The screen showed overlapping trajectory maps from multiple alien squadrons. Voss studied the display, his experienced eyes catching the implications immediately. "They're identical. Not just identical, predictable. Every saurian squadron flies the exact same pattern. Every Kithara formation follows the same mathematical progression. Even their random, evasive maneuvers follow algorithmic patterns. And human pilots?" Marcus switched to another display showing human flight patterns. The lines were messy, inconsistent, with random variations that defied mathematical modeling. "We're all over the place. No two pilots fly exactly alike, no pattern repeats perfectly. Admiral Voss was quiet for a long moment. In military academy, they taught us that unpredictability could be a tactical advantage. The aliens don't see it that way. They see chaos, inefficiency, primitive thinking. Voss smiled grimly. Sometimes the thing others mock you for turns out to be exactly what saves you. The warning signs. The next morning brought an unusual sight to the observation deck, 3 coalition patrol ships returning early from what should have been a routine sector sweep. Marcus noticed them first, counting only 3 ships when 4 had departed. "Where's the 4th ship?" he asked Rebecca, who had joined him for their daily coffee. Before she could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Emergency lights cast red shadows through the corridors as voices in multiple languages called for senior staff to report to the command center. Marcus and Rebecca exchanged glances. This wasn't a drill. In the command center, High Chancellor Qixtar stood before a massive holographic display showing the patrol route. A small debris field marked the location where the 4th ship should have been. "Report," Admiral Voss demanded as he entered, Marcus and Rebecca close behind. "Patrol ship Nexus 4 has been destroyed," reported a Kithra officer, her insectoid features betraying no emotion. No distress signal was received. No enemy contact reported by the surviving ships. "How is that possible?" Voss asked. "Coalition sensors should have detected any hostile approach." Qixtar's scaled head turned slowly. "The enemy, whoever they are, struck without warning and vanished without trace. Our AI systems detected no threat until the ship was already gone." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. Something was hunting coalition ships, and their perfect AI systems hadn't even seen it coming. "What was the destroyed ship's designation?" he asked quietly. The Kithra officer checked her display. "AI-controlled patrol vessel, standard Saurian configuration." Marcus caught Admiral Voss's eye. The older man's expression suggested he was thinking the same thing. In a galaxy where AI perfection was valued above all else, something had found a way to turn that perfection into a vulnerability. As the aliens debated scanning protocols and security measures, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that humanity's greatest weakness, their chaotic, unpredictable nature, might suddenly become their most valuable asset. The mockery was about to end, but not in the way anyone expected. The first strike. The hunt begins. Captain Diana Cross studied the star charts in her cramped quarters aboard the reconnaissance vessel Wanderer. 3 weeks had passed since the first coalition ship vanished, and the attacks were escalating. 7 ships lost, all AI-controlled, all destroyed without warning or trace of their attackers. "Captain, we're receiving an emergency transmission from Sector 12, announced Commander Jackson Reed over the intercom. His voice carried the tension that had become common among the human crews lately. Diana rushed to the bridge, where her small crew of 12 humans monitored their primitive-looking consoles. Compared to the sleek alien vessels, the Wanderer looked like a rust bucket held together with determination and spare parts. "Report," Diana ordered, sliding into her command chair. Jackson turned from his station, his dark face grim. "Coalition mining convoy under attack. For transport ships, 2 escort vessels. The escorts are already gone." "How far?" 18 minutes at maximum burn." Diana didn't hesitate. "All hands, battle stations. Pilot right, lay in a course for Sector 12, full power. Racing against time." The Wanderer screamed through space at speeds that would have made coalition engineers nervous. Human ships were built tougher than they looked, designed to handle the stress of aggressive maneuvering that AI systems would calculate as inefficient. Thomas Wright, barely 25 and Diana's best pilot, pushed the engines beyond their recommended limits. "Captain, we've got multiple contacts on sensors. Whatever's hitting the convoy, they're not showing up clearly." "Explain." "Ghost signatures, ma'am. Like they're there but not there. Our sensors keep losing them." Diana frowned. Coalition technology was far superior to human equipment, yet their ships were being destroyed while human vessels remained untouched. How long until we reach the convoy? 6 minutes. Open a channel to the surviving ships. The main screen flickered to life, showing the terrified face of a Kithra transport captain. Behind him, sparks flew from damaged consoles while his crew worked frantically. Human vessel, you must stay back, the alien captain chittered in panic. The attackers are invisible. They strike without warning. We're here to help, Diana replied calmly. How many ships are attacking you? Unknown. Our sensors detect nothing until the moment of impact. Diana turned to her tactical officer. Right, what do you see? Thomas studied his displays with the focused intensity of a natural hunter. Unlike the aliens who relied on computer analysis, he trusted his instincts and experience. There, Captain. Bearing 047 Mark 12. Something's wrong with the way light bends in that area. I don't see anything on sensors, Jackson reported. That's because you're looking for what should be there, Thomas explained. Look for what shouldn't be. The invisible enemy. Diana watched as Thomas maneuvered the Wanderer toward the distortion he'd spotted. Human pilots flew by feel as much as instruments, reading space the way ancient sailors read the sea. What looked like empty space to AI systems held subtle clues for experienced human eyes. There. Thomas shouted. Stealth ship, port side. It's moving toward the lead transport. Diana saw it now, a barely visible outline against the stars, like heat shimmer in space. The enemy vessel was sleek and deadly, designed to be invisible to electronic sensors but not to human perception. All weapons, target that shimmer. Fire. The Wanderer's guns blazed, sending streams of plasma toward the invisible attacker. The enemy ship, caught completely off guard, flickered into visibility as its stealth systems failed. It was unlike anything in Coalition databases, organic curves that seemed to shift and flow. Direct hit. Jackson called out. Enemy vessel is, wait, it's splitting apart. What they had thought was one ship was actually 3 smaller vessels flying in perfect formation. The damaged craft peeled away while its companions moved to flank the human ship. They're trying to surround us, Diana observed. Right, evasive maneuvers. Captain. Hang on, this might get interesting. Human chaos. Thomas threw the Wanderer into a series of maneuvers that defied logic. He rolled inverted, dove toward the nearest asteroid, then suddenly reversed course and climbed at an angle that made the ship's frame groan in protest. The enemy ships, clearly controlled by some form of AI, tried to predict his movements and failed completely. Their weapons' fire passed harmlessly through space where the Wanderer would have been if Thomas had followed any logical flight pattern. How are they missing us? Jackson asked, gripping his console as the ship performed another impossible turn. Because they're trying to calculate chaos, Diana replied with growing understanding. Their systems are designed to predict optimal flight paths. But Thomas isn't flying optimally, he's flying human. Meanwhile, Overlord Nethvac of the Kithra observed the battle from his command ship 3 sectors away. His compound eyes studied the tactical display with growing confusion. Explain to me, he clicked to his subordinates, how a primitive human vessel is outmaneuvering an enemy that destroyed 7 coalition ships. His tactical officer's antennae drooped in uncertainty. Unknown, Overlord. The human ship's movements make no mathematical sense. It should have been destroyed within the first minute of engagement. The pattern breaks. Aboard the Wanderer, Diana watched her crew work with the smooth efficiency born of years together. Unlike alien crews who followed rigid protocols, humans adapted on the fly. Captain, I've got a lock on the second enemy ship, reported her weapons officer. Fire at will. Another stealth vessel flickered into visibility as human weapons found their mark. The enemy, having lost the element of surprise, began to retreat. They're running, Thomas observed, bringing the ship around for another pass. Let them go, Diana ordered. Our job is to protect the convoy. As the surviving transports limped towards safety, Diana opened a channel to Coalition Command. The face that appeared on screen belonged to High Chancellor QYXstar, his reptilian features showing rare uncertainty. Captain Cross, report your status. Convoy secured, Chancellor. Enemy vessels retreated after we engaged them. Impossible. Our best ships could not even detect these attackers, yet you defeated them with. He paused, clearly struggling with the concept. A human vessel. Diana smiled grimly. Sometimes being unpredictable is better than being perfect. The shift. Word of the Wanderer's success spread quickly through Coalition channels. For the first time since the attacks began, someone had not only survived an encounter with the mysterious enemy but had actually driven them off. In the Coalition Council chambers, emergency sessions were called. Species that had mocked human military capabilities for decades now found themselves forced to reconsider their assumptions. The evidence is undeniable, Admiral Kelric Voss told the assembled alien leaders. Every ship lost has been AI-controlled. Every human vessel encountered by these attackers has survived. The pattern is clear. High Chancellor QYXstar's tail lashed in agitation. You suggest that your chaotic approach to warfare is somehow superior to our calculated precision? I'm suggesting, Voss replied calmly, that your calculated precision is exactly what's getting your ships destroyed. The enemy has found a way to predict and counter AI-controlled vessels. But they can't predict chaos. The council chamber fell silent. The implications were staggering. Everything the coalition believed about military superiority was being challenged by a species they considered primitive. Commander Jackson Reed, who had been given permission to address the council, stepped forward. Honored delegates, Captain Cross requests permission to form a mixed squadron, human pilots with coalition technology. We can protect your ships while our analysts study the enemy's methods. The silence stretched longer. Finally, Overlord Nethvac spoke. If human unpredictability can succeed where our perfection has failed, he clicked reluctantly, then perhaps it is time to embrace chaos. The age of human pilots being mocked was ending. The age of human pilots being needed had begun. Patterns in the chaos. The war room. Dr. Nathan Pierce stared at the massive holographic display that filled the Coalition's Strategic Planning Center. At 45, the former pilot-turned-military analyst had spent the last month drowning in data, attack patterns, ship movements, sensor logs, and debris analysis from 15 destroyed vessels. "Show me the timeline again," he said to Lieutenant Emma Foster, his intelligence officer. The display shifted, showing a three-dimensional map of Coalition space with red markers indicating each attack. As the timeline progressed, the attacks formed a clear pattern spiraling inward toward the Coalition's core worlds. General Harrison Blake, a barrel-chested man with steel-gray hair, studied the display with growing concern. "They're not random raiders. This is a systematic campaign." "Agreed," Nathan said, manipulating the hologram to highlight specific details. "But look at this, they're not trying to cause maximum damage. Every attack could have been worse." Prime Logician Velthora, the crystalline Nexary data specialist, chimed in with her musical voice. "Explain your reasoning, Dr. Pierce. The loss of ships and personnel appears quite substantial." Nathan zoomed in on individual attack sites. In each case, the enemy had opportunities to destroy additional vessels but chose not to. They hit just enough targets to study our response patterns, then withdraw. "You're saying they're testing us?" Blake asked. "I'm saying they're learning us. Watch this. The hidden truth." Nathan activated a new display showing Coalition fleet movements in response to each attack. The pattern was eerily consistent. Ships would converge on attack sites following predetermined routes, sensor sweeps would follow standard protocols, and reinforcements would arrive via the most efficient paths. "Every response is predictable because it's AI calculated," Nathan explained. Our enemy doesn't need to be lucky. They just need to understand our algorithms. Lieutenant Foster pulled up additional data. Sir, I've been analyzing communication intercepts. The enemy ships coordinate without any detectable radio chatter. It's like they share a single mind. Hive intelligence, Blake concluded grimly. We're fighting a networked AI system that can predict our AI systems. Velthora's crystalline form pulsed with concerned colors. This presents a significant tactical disadvantage. How does one achieve unpredictability against an enemy that calculates all possibilities? Nathan smiled for the first time in weeks. You don't calculate. You improvise. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The coalition's greatest military advantage, perfect coordination through AI systems, had become their greatest weakness against an enemy that could think like their computers. The human factor. General Blake called an emergency meeting with all human commanders in the sector. The gathering took place aboard the battleship Defiance, humanity's flagship in coalition space. The ship's war room buzzed with tension as experienced officers reviewed Nathan's findings. The math is clear, Nathan told the assembled commanders. AI versus AI, they win every time. Their systems are simply more advanced. But AI versus human intuition. The Wanderer proved that, interrupted Captain Diana Cross. She had become something of a legend since her successful defense of the mining convoy. When we stopped trying to outcalculate them and started flying like humans, we won. Admiral Kelric Voss nodded thoughtfully. The question is whether we can scale this up. One ship succeeding through luck is different from building a strategy around chaos. It wasn't luck, Diana insisted. Thomas Wright spotted their stealth ships because he wasn't looking for sensor readings. He was looking for what his gut told him was wrong. No AI thinks like that. Lieutenant Foster projected new tactical analyses. I've studied every human military engagement for the past century. Our most successful operations shared common elements: improvisation under pressure, individual initiative, and adaptation to changing circumstances. Nathan picked up the thread. The coalition trains pilots to follow optimal procedures. We train pilots to survive when procedures fail. The resistance builds. Word of the human analysis spread through coalition command, meeting predictable resistance from alien military leaders. In the Grand Council chamber of Station Nexus 7, heated debates raged about military doctrine and species capability. High Chancellor Qixtar's scaled form radiated skepticism. You propose we abandon centuries of tactical evolution to embrace randomness? Not randomness, General Blake corrected. Adaptability. The ability to change plans instantly based on field conditions. Overlord Nethvac, who had begun to respect human capabilities after the convoy incident, clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. Our forces are trained for coordination, not improvisation. How does one teach chaos? You don't teach it, Diana said. You unleash it. Give human pilots freedom to act on instinct, and support them with coalition technology. The combination might surprise you. Prime Logician Velthora's crystalline form shifted through concerned colors. The risk analysis suggests significant potential for mission failure if pilots deviate from optimal parameters. Nathan stepped forward with his final piece of evidence. Ma'am, every single mission that followed optimal parameters against this enemy has resulted in total loss. Our failure rate can't get any worse. The test proposal. The debate reached a crescendo when Admiral Voss presented his formal proposal to the Coalition Council. The chamber, filled with representatives from 17 species, buzzed with translated conversations in dozens of languages. I request permission to form a joint task force, Voss announced. Human pilots in coalition ships, with full tactical freedom to engage the enemy using unconventional methods. The silence that followed was deafening. Chancellor Qixtar was the first to speak. You ask us to entrust our most advanced vessels to pilots who fly by feeling. I ask you to try something that works instead of repeating something that doesn't, Voss replied bluntly. Overlord Nethvac leaned forward, his compound eyes reflecting the chamber's lights. What guarantees can you provide that this approach will succeed? None, Voss admitted. But I can guarantee that continuing current tactics will result in more dead crews and destroyed ships. Lieutenant Foster presented the statistical analysis. Coalition forces have a 0% survival rate against this enemy. Human forces have a 100% survival rate. The choice should be obvious. The breakthrough moment. Dr. Nathan Pierce watched the council debate with growing frustration. These beings prided themselves on logic, yet they were rejecting the most logical conclusion possible. Finally, he stood and requested permission to address the assembly. Honored delegates, he began, you've spent your civilizations perfecting the art of calculation. You've eliminated variables, standardized responses, and achieved mathematical precision in warfare. It's magnificent. The alien delegates preened slightly at the praise. But perfection has a weakness, Nathan continued. It's predictable. Your enemy has achieved a level of calculation that exceeds your own. They can predict your perfect responses because they're more perfect than you are. Murmurs of concern rippled through the chamber. Humans never achieved perfection because we couldn't. We're chaotic, inefficient, unpredictable. We make mistakes, follow hunches, and break our own rules. For centuries, you've seen this as primitive behavior. Nathan paused, letting his words sink in. Today, I'm here to tell you that our imperfection is the only thing standing between you and extinction. Because chaos, by definition, cannot be perfectly calculated. The chamber erupted in translated discussions. Species that had never questioned their superiority were suddenly forced to confront an uncomfortable truth: sometimes being imperfect was better than being perfectly predictable. The decision. High Chancellor Qixtar called for order, his reptilian features showing the strain of command during crisis. Dr. Pierce, your analysis suggests that embracing human methods is our only viable option. Not embracing them, Chancellor. Partnering with them. Use our chaos to disrupt their calculations while your technology gives us the tools to win. Prime Logician Velthora's crystalline form pulsed with decision-making colors. The logical conclusion, despite its counterintuitive nature, supports the human proposal. One by one, the coalition species voted. Some reluctantly, others with growing conviction, but the result was unanimous. Humanity would be given the chance to prove that imperfection could triumph over perfection. As the council session ended, Nathan caught Admiral Voss in the corridor. Think it'll work, Admiral? Voss smiled grimly. Nathan, we're about to find out if being human is enough to save the galaxy. No pressure. The age of calculated warfare was ending. The age of human intuition was about to begin. The human solution. The squadron forms. Colonel James Mitchell stood on the flight deck of the coalition carrier Harmony, watching his hand-picked team of pilots prepare for what might be humanity's most important mission. At 53, Mitchell had flown combat missions since the Earth Defense Wars, and his weathered face showed every year of that experience. Quite a collection of misfits you've assembled, observed Major Rachel Torres, his second-in-command. The tall Latina pilot had earned her reputation flying impossible rescue missions in the outer colonies. Mitchell smiled grimly as he watched the mixed group of humans and aliens working together. Misfits are exactly what we need. Every pilot here has been rejected by standard coalition squadrons for being too unpredictable. Sergeant Lucas Barnes, a stocky gunship pilot from the mining worlds, looked up from his pre-flight checklist. Colonel, these alien ships handle nothing like our old birds. The response time is incredible. Good, Mitchell replied. We'll need every advantage we can get. The enemy has been studying coalition ships for months. They know exactly how every system works. Supreme Admiral Korthal, the amphibian Centauri fleet commander, approached with his distinctive webbed gait. His large eyes showed the stress of recent losses. Colonel Mitchell, I must express my concerns about this mission. You propose to take 12 pilots against an enemy that has destroyed 30 coalition vessels. Exactly, Admiral. They've destroyed 30 AI-controlled vessels. They've never faced human pilots in coalition ships. The hunt begins. The Joint Task Force launched from 3 different stations simultaneously, a decision that confused coalition tactical computers but made perfect sense to Mitchell. Predictable launching patterns were exactly what had gotten previous fleets destroyed. All units, maintain radio silence until contact, Mitchell ordered. Trust your instincts, ignore your computers, and remember, we're not trying to be perfect. We're trying to be impossible to predict. The squadron consisted of 12 ships, 8 human pilots in modified coalition fighters, 2 alien pilots who had volunteered to learn human tactics, and 2 heavy gunships for support. It was a ragged formation that violated every principle of coalition military doctrine. Major Torres flew on Mitchell's left wing, her ship weaving slightly as she fought the urge to maintain perfect formation spacing. Colonel, it feels wrong to fly this sloppy. That's exactly right, Major. If it feels wrong to us, imagine how it looks to an enemy AI trying to calculate our next move. Deep in enemy territory, the stealth ships that had terrorized coalition space detected the approaching squadron. Their advanced AI systems immediately began calculating intercept courses based on standard coalition protocols. But the calculations kept failing. The human ships changed course for no apparent reason, altered speed without tactical justification, and maintained formations that made no mathematical sense. First contact. Contact, announced Sergeant Barnes from his gunship. I've got multiple ghost signatures, bearing 195 Mark 7. They're trying to flank us, but they're moving to intercept where we should be, not where we are. Mitchell felt the familiar calm that came with combat. All units, prepare for engagement. Remember, don't fly where they expect you to fly. The stealth ships materialized from empty space, their organic curves visible for the first time in months. There were 8 of them, moving in perfect coordination to surround the human squadron. They're beautiful, whispered one of the alien volunteers, a young Saurian named Kethvar who had insisted on learning human tactics. They're also predictable, Torres replied, throwing her fighter into a spiraling climb that defied physics. Watch this. The enemy ships fired at the space where her fighter should have been, their weapons passing harmlessly below as she corkscrewed away from their calculated intercept point. Chaos unleashed. What followed was unlike any space battle in coalition history. The human pilots flew like their ships were extensions of their bodies, making split-second decisions that no computer could anticipate. Barnes rolled his heavy gunship upside down and dove toward an asteroid, causing 2 enemy ships to collide as they tried to follow standard pursuit patterns. Yeehaw! These fancy alien ships sure can dance. Mitchell found himself in a deadly game of cat and mouse with the enemy flagship. The stealth ship's AI kept trying to predict his moves, firing at empty space while Mitchell's fighter twisted through impossible maneuvers. Colonel, you're pulling 12 GS, Torres warned over the comm. Coalition pilots would black out at those levels. Good thing I'm not a coalition pilot, Mitchell replied, pulling his ship through a turn that would have torn apart a standard fighter. The 2 alien volunteers, Kethvar and a Nexari pilot named Shimmel, struggled to adapt human tactics to their own flying styles. Years of perfect precision were hard to overcome. I cannot make my ship behave irrationally, Shimmel complained, her crystalline voice tinged with frustration. Don't think about it, advised Torres. Just react. Trust your gut, not your brain. The turning point. As the battle raged, the enemy AI systems became increasingly confused. Their advanced calculations, designed to predict and counter coalition tactics, couldn't process the chaos of human intuition. They're hesitating, observed Barnes, watching an enemy ship pause mid-maneuver. Their computer brains can't figure out what we're going to do next. Mitchell saw the opportunity. All units, converge on the flagship. Time to end this. But as the squadron moved to attack, more enemy ships appeared from hyperspace. 12 ships against 24. The odds had just doubled against them. "Colonel, we're outnumbered 2-1, Torres reported, her voice steady despite the dire situation. "Then we'll have to be twice as unpredictable," Mitchell replied. Supreme Admiral Corthell, monitoring the battle from his command ship, watched in amazement as the human squadron not only survived the overwhelming odds but began gaining the upper hand. "Impossible," he whispered. "Their tactics make no sense, yet they are winning. Victory through madness." The final phase of the battle became a masterclass in human adaptability. When conventional attacks failed, Barnes used his gunship as a battering ram. When stealth ships tried to disappear, human pilots tracked them by following their instincts rather than sensors. Kethvar, the young Saurian, finally understood what the humans meant about flying by feel. Abandoning his AI assistants, he let instinct guide his ship and successfully destroyed 2 enemy vessels. "I think I am beginning to understand," he called out excitedly. "Logic is predictable, but madness is infinite." The enemy flagship, its AI systems overloaded by trying to calculate impossible human behavior, made a fatal error. It attempted to ram Mitchell's fighter in a desperate kamikaze attack, but Mitchell was already somewhere else entirely. Torres delivered the killing blow, her weapons tearing through the flagship's hull. As it exploded, the remaining enemy ships seemed to lose coordination, their networked AI damaged by the loss of their command vessel. "All enemy ships retreating," Barnes reported. "They're running for hyperspace." Mitchell allowed himself a small smile. "Let them go. They've learned something today that their creators never intended: chaos beats calculation." The aftermath. The coalition fleet arrived 3 hours later to find the human squadron intact and victorious. Supreme Admiral Corthell boarded Mitchell's ship personally, his large amphibian eyes showing emotions rarely seen among his species. "Colonel Mitchell, I owe you an apology. We underestimated not just your capabilities, but the value of what you call imperfection." Mitchell looked around at his exhausted but triumphant pilots. "Admiral, perfection is predictable. And in war, predictable gets you killed." The battle would be studied for years to come, but its immediate impact was clear. Human pilots were no longer seen as primitive relics but as the galaxy's most valuable tactical asset. As news of the victory spread throughout coalition space, the mockery that had plagued human pilots for decades finally ended. They had proven that sometimes the best way to fight a perfect enemy was to be perfectly imperfect. The age of human space superiority had begun, not through advanced technology or superior firepower, but through the simple recognition that chaos, intuition, and human stubbornness could triumph over any amount of calculated precision. Major Torres summed it up best as they headed home: "Turns out being human isn't a bug, it's a feature." The end.